Welcome to the Life's Best Medicine podcast, where we are finding hope and healing one episode at a time. No appointment needed, no rubber gloves, and no coping. Just a healthy dose of life lessons to help equip you for this wild journey we call life. Hey everyone, this is a friendly reminder that we are here for entertainment purposes only. We may not even be that entertaining at times, but this is not medical advice. Talk to your doctor, check with your healthcare professionals before making any lifestyle changes or medicine changes. What we're talking about is our clinical experience and what we've seen. And so if you really want our advice, you can consult us. You can actually consult me as a doctor, or you can consult my guest and get all your questions answered. But we can't give free medical advice because we can't pay our bills with that, but we can help to educate you a bit and allow you to think a little bit. And always reach out to your medical professional before making any lifestyle changes. Thank you. I want to thank my sponsors for bringing these episodes. There's some great ones coming up in the next couple of months. Health Code, thank you. It's Get Health, GET HLTH. They have some great shakes, high protein, good fats. And I made ice cream out of it. So I made the vanilla ice cream and added some strawberries and really was a hit at my Memorial Day barbecue, and also made their maple protein bars. All this is on their website at gethealth.com. And also we have a discount code. If you get their product, it's called MetHealth, M-E-T for metabolic health, H-E-A-L-T-H. And also Keto Mojo, thank you so much. I'm using them for monitoring glucose and ketone levels. And my patients love using it, getting their direct information very quickly, and they can share it with me. So it really makes life easy and helps us stay accountable and helps us double check on the continuous glucose monitors to make sure the sugars are correct. So Health Code and Keto Mojo, thank you so much. Greatly appreciate you. And thank you for bringing these episodes as we all get ready for summer. Hello, and welcome back to the Life's Best Medicine podcast. Today, I'm under major pressure, man. One of my sponsors, I had to drag him on because I want people to know his story. A lot of you guys know Ben Bikman, the guy behind basically a lot of the stuff I'm doing. So he's been a role model and a mentor as a person, but as a scientist also. So I have Joel Bikman, Ben's brother. They do Health Code, who sponsors the podcast. And Joel's a really cool guy. I like him. I reach out to them. I'm very particular about who I, use as a sponsor. I don't want to be biased in what I'm saying. So Joel, welcome. And what I want to say is when I reach out to him, he's like, yeah, I love what you're doing. We support it, right? Do what you want to do. And I didn't want to have handcuffs on, but I don't want to put my sponsors at risk either, because sometimes it's hard in medicine. There's controversial stuff that we talk about. Unless you've been in a cave the last 3 years, you probably know what I'm talking about. Joel, welcome, man. So awesome to have you.
Thanks, Brian. Really appreciate it. We're obviously big fans of yours, and I was really grateful for the introduction through Ben to you and to your awesome podcasts. We're big fans.
Yeah, and when I talk to you, I'm like, this guy on his own, you've done a lot in life and you've accomplished a lot. And so tell people your story. Like, obviously growing up in a gang neighborhood with Ben, and I'll tell stories about when Ben was selling drugs, and I want to hear the whole story.
Well, yeah, we grew up on the mean streets of Sterling, Alberta. It's a village in there in Canada, in Alberta. It had when I was growing up, about 800 people. Literally a village. We weren't big enough to be a town. I think it's a town now. But so the mean streets were frozen, half the year. And it's a wonderful place to grow up. But we were fortunate enough to have just incredible parents with massive dreams and a big vision for their children. And you can see it. You mentioned Ben. He's probably the brightest of us all. We're certainly proud of him. But we're big family. There's 9 kids. And so 8 of us are in this, or no, I take that back. All 9 of us are in the States. We all went to school here in the States and have stayed here and love it and love this country and love being Canadian. I don't want you to get any, angry texts or calls or whatever else. We love being Canadian, but most of us, or all of us now, live in the States. My dad still is in Canada, but I came to nutrition from the business side of things. And so I started out in advertising and was in advertising for quite a while. And my first, corporate job was with a nutrition company to start their marketing department. And they grew very rapidly. And I grew their marketing department for them. And then I went into product development. And then I went into operations. And so that had been the last 16 years of my life. And so Ben, being a leading metabolic scientist, when we got together and we talked on the phone, what do you think we talked about? I mean, you could only talk about sports for so long and other things. And we ended up talking about nutrition. And so we had some family members of ours whose lives were really negatively impacted. And we believe that had they had better access to proper nutrition earlier in life, that their lives would have been dramatically improved and lengthened. And so Ben and I have talked for more than a decade about, boy, I know how to run nutrition businesses. And you're a scientist who is interested in more than just research. You're interested in solutions. We can bring solutions to people. And so that's where Health Code really started. We've talking about it for a long time. I was fortunate enough to get a really good exit from the company that I was helping to operate. And the timing for that was great. Of course, by the time we launched and had product, it was right in the middle of COVID, which I don't recommend anybody start a business during COVID. But
yeah, we were on the same dumb business plan. I did the same thing. It was the greatest move I've ever made. But at the time, you're thinking, "Ooh, this is not a good time to do this."
That's right. The timing was terrible. But I have a good friend of mine who's built some really good businesses, and his comment to me was, "Well, if you survive, you guys are going to be really resilient and really flexible," and that's true. It's forced us to have to pivot and to make some really decisive changes and other things like that. And so, so from a background, Ben and I came at nutrition from very different perspectives, but it's a really good, a good partnership in that regard.
Was it hard, like when you were starting? Like I imagine my brother and I were messing around with trying to do something together, and trying to get the formulation right so it's not clumpy, so it's not this, so it's not. I mean, how was that journey for you guys trying to find a product, say we don't like this, try this for a week? How did you guys do it?
Yeah, so with my background in some product development, I was fortunate enough to have some really great contacts that helped us get beyond the formula into something that could actually be developed. And so there's obviously a little bit of give and take. And how can you bring something to market that can actually work? To your point, like if we only use these ingredients, it won't mix into solution. It won't mix into any kind of a liquid. And so there are some of those things. But having Ben as the formulator and really his thoughts behind it, because we knew that to address the biggest health issue that the average person faces, which is they're eating the wrong food. Well, that means you can't come up with a pill, right? You can't come up with just mix this little thing together and you'll be fine. It had to be food. And, Ben was really clear on that early on. And what we both committed to was we can't regret doing this. I can't regret leaving my career and starting this new company, and at some pretty significant personal cost. Ben can't attach his name to something that we can't be proud of because he's a research scientist, and so we agreed that this would be a no compromise formula, that it had to be something that we ourselves and our loved ones would use and we could espouse without having any regrets. And so early on, it was things like, hey, we could save a lot of money, Ben, if we used plant-based protein. And his comment was, well, then we can't do it. If it's we've got to shave off some costs to use some kind of inferior protein that has anti-nutrients and that has an incomplete amino acid profile, well, then it's just not worth doing. And so it's not an anti-plant-based. In fact, we have a really cool, very, very interesting plant-based version that we are working on right now that addresses some of those things, but it's not cheap. And so there were things, again, across the whole formula, we had to make sure that the quality was there and that the quantities were sufficient enough to be efficacious. And so that was a delicate discussion, because I knew we had to, I mean, you could have the best thing ever, but if it's so expensive that nobody can afford it, well, then it doesn't matter. You've failed at your mission to help people get healthy, which is our mission. Help people get as healthy as possible. And so what we ended up doing instead, no compromise formula. The compromise we made was on our business, and that we have to be as lean as possible. We have to operate with as little overhead as possible. We have to find ways to operate, and with shipping and with everything, that's why we don't have a whole ton of products. We have the world's most healthiest, most nutritionally complete meal replacement shake. We don't have a whole bunch of other things like, we need to have a greens powder now because that's popular, or we need to have, whatever else, or we need to have bars or whatever else, because that adds complexity and it adds cost. And same thing with flavors. I mean, people are saying, hey, when are you going to come out with banana? When are you going to come out with strawberry? When are you going to come out with, I want it unflavored, I want this, I want that. Really difficult to do when you have the world's most nutritionally complete meal replacement shake has a non-compromise formula. Instead, we just have to be very, very intentional on where every dollar is spent, because the margin's just not there. And we did that eyes wide open. We have to grow. We have to be big enough that we can get, that enough people are impacted. And we went into this believing that by doing so, we would get a lot of word of mouth. And of course, I shouldn't say of course, we're fortunate that our single biggest source of new customers are from existing customers due to word of mouth. And so that's how we've made it work. So anyway, I probably answered that question longer than you wanted or intended, and everybody's now asleep. So maybe we can start recording now.
No, it's actually really critically important. I don't think we'd be talking, obviously, I've always respected Ben. I've seen his work, and I was like, wow, this guy, and I hear him talk and his level of integrity. I knew that. And when he came out with this product, I was like, oof, this is going to be dangerous. This is a dangerous one. And I started looking at the products and the ingredients. I was like, wow, this is amazing. When I started seeing, that you're using collagen and high quality, red mint salt, you're not just like using the cheapest ingredients. And I realized, ooh, that's why it's going to be more expensive. If you want good quality food, I mean, you can go to McDonald's and get something for $2. It's going to kill you, but you can get it there. And there's a lot you can do. And I'll tell you, the other thing is, over the years, the reason I reached out to you guys in particular was I was doing a little thing with some women up in Vacaville. They didn't even, 18 out of 23 didn't speak English, and they're not a market for you guys. And I reached out to Ben. He goes, how much product do you need? I'll send it to him. And because their break room was a total disaster. And these people are like, oh, I could have, instead of having this other shake I was having, I can have this. And they're seeing their sugars come down, they're feeling better. And then I start using it with my patients. And so when you start seeing that and the integrity of the company, because I know that's not a market, they're not going to be reordering from you, they can't afford it, but we can help them and we can get them on right track. And so, I mean, I'm just excited about stuff we can do in Guatemala, different places where we can help people. And I brought some down with me, actually, because you guys sent me some samples. I'm like, okay, I'll take it down. So people are like, oh my gosh, how do I get this? And so, there's a lot of, things that we can do to reach the underserved. But that was the integrity. And I knew Ben, just talking to him, and I hear him saying, well, There's not data on that yet. I think it's true, but we don't have data yet, so I'm not going to say that, and so I know he's not a guy who's a grandstander who's going to throw something out there that he hasn't. His integrity is very important to him, and I knew that, and I knew your integrity would be important to you because the way you were raised and your family values. And so that's why I was happy to reach out to you guys and go, okay, let's do this. This is cool. And so, and bringing these stories to people, and
Yeah.
so I think it just shows the integrity of the company also, but that you put thought into this. And I get it. Like, you're like, Ben, do we have to have this product? It's gonna be way more. We could do it like this so much cheaper. And you're looking from a business perspective,
Yeah.
and he's looking from a nutrition. And then you have to compromise at some point and see what works. Because if the products that are the healthiest taste like garbage, no one's gonna buy them, no matter how healthy it is for them.
Yeah, for sure. And it's that kind of I don't want to say static, but it's just those two forces. There's a business force and there's this science force, and it encouraged us, it drove us to make the right decisions for the right reasons, and just really had us look at ways that we could bring this to market without it being. I mean, it's easily the most premium shake out there, but it's not priced that way. I mean, for $3.33, you're getting for many people, it's not only the healthiest thing they'll have in the day. For many Americans, it's the healthiest thing they'll ever have consumed. And, that's a pretty bold thing to say, except you would know as better than I would what the average person actually consumes in a day. So here's something that's nutritionally optimized with proteins, the most bioavailable proteins, short chain, medium chain, and long chain fats. The only shake that has that kind of a blend. We've got, as you said, the things like collagen and the apple cider vinegar, which is the shortest chain fat. Prebiotic fiber, probiotics, et cetera. I mean, we just didn't cut corners. And so that kind of, not being willing to compromise, we had to look at just changing things up. And so we've really built this very, very unique company structure that has very little cost associated with it. And the only time that the partners are able to make any kind of money is when the company itself does well. And the company has to grow in order for us to be able to afford these high quality, high quantity ingredients, because, we launched just right around 3 years ago. Well, supply chain, all of our costs have gone up dramatically, and yet we've kept our costs exactly the same. And it's because of our mission. And so that goes throughout, just from a product standpoint, but also we put out content every single week. And that's not there is a cost to it, both internally and externally. I mean, Ben creates content on a regular basis, and we have other writers who create, doctors, and we've had Michael Eads, who's contributed articles. We have Temple Stewart, who's this ketogenic based nutritionist who's brilliant, and others who
we just recorded with her. We're releasing hers pretty soon. She's doing a great stuff. Yeah, great.
Oh, she's the best. But it's all part of. I mean, we've had people that have reached out to us, investors and others, who've said, hey, we really like what you guys are doing. We'd like to invest. And when they understand our business, and we don't, we're self-funded. Fortunately, that's part of why we're able to do what we do. But it's this notion of, you guys you're putting out a lot of content. Yes, we are, because our mission is to help people get as healthy as possible. Most of the people who sign up for our newsletters have never bought product. And we're totally fine with that, because our mission is to help people get as healthy as possible. So we put out all this content. Like this week, it was a review of sucralose. Well, we don't have sucralose in our product. We don't think it's a good ingredient, but there are people who have questions about it. And so we put out this article on, here's the pros and cons of sucralose. And we'll talk about some other ones too, but same thing with recipes. We started out with a bunch of, here are different ways you can use our shake. Well, then we had to have this conversation around, well, what are people eating for their other meals when they're not having the shakes? Like, we need to be, if we're true to our mission about caring about how people are healthy, we need to make more meals available to them. Well, I mean, I'm not a professional chef. What do I know about this stuff? So we had to go out and find people who could provide these low carb recipes that we would serve our own families. And so we now provide those every single week as well. And so it's not just product. We want people to make the right choices. And that's something that Ben and I both feel are really important, and which is why we're willing to invest in that as well.
Yeah, and that's what surprised me. Honestly, I went back and I was looking. I'm like, let me make some. I have some health code here. Let me make some recipes. And I was like, wow, the maple bars, the vanilla maple bar, awesome. And I was like,
Yeah.
I wonder how they came up with this recipe. And it's so easy. And that's the other thing is
Yeah.
if it's too complicated, for lunch, I could just throw my, I have my magic bullet here or whatever it is, Ninja. I throw in a cup and blend it without some ice. It takes me 2 minutes between patients. And so many people, that's their stumbling, is they don't have time to plan a meal. So they end up having pizza that night. Right. So, those are the things where you can make great meals and have nutritional value and do it quickly and easily. I made the cookies one time. There's so much stuff on there. And I was like, how do they come up with these dang recipes? It's pretty ingenious. Whoever's doing those. I mean, is it a mix of people, or do you have a certain person who's the recipe person?
We've had 5 different people create recipes using our product. And then we've had, I think, 3 different people that are nutritionists and dietitians that create these keto-based or keto-friendly, low-carb meals. And so, yeah, we pay them all. And it's, again, with a company with tight margins, you have to really believe in that mission. I mean, because if you're just too hardcore about the profit, you'd never do things like this. And so, yeah, it was really important. I mean, I think you brought up an earlier comment just about the convenience factor. I mean, one of the things that we tell people, I mean, even in our advertising, it's if you have the time, knowledge, budget, discipline to plan, purchase, and prepare these metabolically perfect meals, you should never use health code, because you wouldn't need to. The challenge that the overwhelming majority of people have is that they don't have that time, knowledge, discipline, budget to plan, purchase, and prepare these metabolically perfect meals. And so they make other bad choices. And even super disciplined people, there's something for having the convenience of, in 30 seconds, I can throw 2 scoops and 8 ounces of water in a shaker cup, and I'm good. I've got a nutritionally optimized meal. And again, for the average person, that first health code shake that they've had is going to be the single healthiest thing they've ever had. And we're proud to be part of that. We're also saddened by that. In a perfect world, health code wouldn't need it. But we're in the situation, or wouldn't be needed rather, but we're in the situation that we're in with rampant disease. And I'm not making any disease claims, so I don't want to get any FDA letters or whatever else. But people are fatter and sicker than they've ever been. And it's not an American problem. It is a world problem.
Well, and that's the thing, is when I read Ben's book, and when I saw every single day of my career, almost every patient, I'll go, look, here's a model Ben did in his office. Look at this with the insulin, sugar, how just checking sugar is not enough. We need to know the insulin. And, seeing his book and looking at what I've seen clinically, what's exciting is when I first met Ben, I was like, man, this is like, so it tells me what I'm seeing. Yeah, like what you're showing in your lab is what I'm seeing clinically. Yeah. And so when we can merge those worlds together, because Ben could do all the research in the world, but if people don't implement it, it doesn't help anyone, and that's why, I was, the other thing with the recipes, just as a side, was a lot of the recipes on there don't even have health code in it. There are other recipes, there are other dinners that you can have and nutritionally sound things that you can have, not saying, okay, every meal you got to eat health code, right? It has a niche of where it's useful for people.
Yeah, for sure. And that's, again, we're proud to be that solution for a lot of people, a growing number of people. I mean, for us, when we hear these success stories and we get videos in and other testimonials and reviews, it really is very, very satisfying, because Ben and I've talked about this. Like, there are a lot easier ways to make money than starting your own company in the middle of COVID. But there's nothing more gratifying than seeing people who are making substantive changes to their diet, both because of the product, because of health code, but especially because of the knowledge, because it doesn't typically end with them, right? They're not just saying, great, I'm healthier, I've made some changes, I'm slimmer, I'm feeling much better, my blood glucose is being managed. This is generational. It impacts families. And so these people are passing along information and passing along healthier habits. That's intensely gratifying. And so it makes all of the sacrifice and the very poor margins, it makes it entirely worthwhile. Because, I think you and I talked just before we started the camera, just about, or maybe it was after, I may getting my time wrong, but just, do you need all this stuff? Right? I certainly don't need any more books, as we've talked about up front. Maybe I'll get around to reading some of these actually, but you don't need more stuff. Health is the ultimate wealth, and that's really what we're seeing a renewed interest in, especially as the economy worsens. People are really increasingly, I've got to take care of my health because that's the best insurance you can have. Being sick is really, really expensive, and so.
Yeah, and that's the irony about what we all did, and it's kind of a crazy thing is that what has come to the forefront, there's no question about it. I think even the average person who doesn't know a lot about medicine or science, they saw that the metabolically sick were the ones who are dying, right? The ones who are really succumbing, and the hospitalists knew that, the doctors knew that. And so we locked everyone in their house, and they're eating their sugary cereal to remember the good old days of Saturday morning cartoons. And so what happened is you come out with a product during that time, and people really don't care about health right then. They're thinking, I'm going to die anyway. That was kind of so many people I talked to, they go, I just stopped exercising because, I watch the news and they say I'm going to die if I get this thing. That had a 99.9x chance of survival if you're relatively healthy. So when you look at the numbers and the odds, you go, well, heck, take care of yourself. And so having a product like that where people working from home can go down and make a shake, they could do that very quickly at lunch, and you don't have to go eat. And the irony, the thing I noticed was the only people I saw losing weight during the lockdowns were salespeople, because they weren't going out to their fancy lunches and drinking wine at night and eating these fancy dinners and bread and pasta every night. They were at home and they're like, I'm bored. What am I going to eat? I'll just heat some chicken up. And those guys lost weight during COVID, and so that's now we're on the other end of this thing, and we realize that's not the end of the story. There's going to be more diseases. There's going to be more problems that come around. So unless we have our health, nothing else really matters. Like if you're sick in bed all day, nothing matters.
Well, prevention is, and you know this better than I would. Prevention's not a sexy thing to try and sell, but it's so important. And so it's just that discipline daily of, I'm going to sacrifice some of my time and maybe sleeping in, and I'm going to go and lift some heavy things, at the gym. And I'm going to try and get some cardio in. I'm going to forego this indulgence, this sugary thing, and I'm going to make some better choices. And so it's really, and again, prevention and insurance, these aren't sexy things for a person who started out a career as a marketer to try and be selling and espousing. But it's really, now I think that we have, as you've said, we have a little bit of a window of time and opportunity to show people and to help demonstrate and help them understand and to educate them that by making some healthier choices now, there are significant future benefits, that you're not consigned to what ails you currently, that food is, and Ben has said this much more articulately than I will right now, but food's what got you into trouble, but food's also what can get you back out of trouble. And we're pleased to be a small part of that.
So I have to ask you, because I've been curious, because I've seen it with a lot of friends who own companies, in nutrition. How did you decide on your sweetener? Like, what was the thought process to say, okay, here's what we're going to use and here's why?
Yeah. So in Ben's book, of course, and he had written that prior to us starting Health Code. And so we talked a lot about it being flavored, or how it would be flavored, because you'd mentioned earlier, it doesn't matter how good it is, how healthy it is. If it doesn't taste good, you're never going to use it. And so that's where I was able to help a little bit. Not that I'm a formulator at all, but I've got really good contacts in the industry. And so we had a person who could take Ben's formula and say, oof, boy, these protein sources these healthy fat sources, these taste awful on their own. Like, this is going to be challenging. And so I'll just put it this way. Ben had very strong opinions on the type of sweeteners that could be used. And that's where we ended up with monk fruit and with Reb M, which which is derived from stevia. We know some people have opinions on both of those. They have no impact on blood glucose. And with that combination and the very expensive natural flavoring that we've used, it tastes really good. And, we hear from the majority of our customers that have used shakes previously that say this is easily the best tasting shake they've ever had. I'll add, because I've been fairly transparent on our poor margins. Our flavoring is more expensive than many shakes cost. So just the flavoring per bag of our shake costs more than some entire bags of other product. And that's on top of a very, very expensive, series of ingredients. So, and it also is indicative of just the cheap sawdust and garbage that a lot of these other shakes. And I don't mean to.
But that's actually true, right? There's sawdust that they're using that as fiber, and then they say, "Oh, net carbs are different," and it's pretty amazing what we're consuming. Yeah. Like when you think we're eating sawdust.
Well, yeah, it's true that it is literal. There is some of that cellulose that is included. I was being sarcastic mostly. But I know some people don't like it where it's like, hey, you don't need to talk about other companies. And I don't really mean to talk about other companies. We're very proud of what we have, and we invite people to compare. For us, it's just it's an education process, and you'd know this. But one of the more common things we get is people saying, "Ooh, there's saturated fat in this product. There's a lot of saturated fat." And we say, yeah, here's a whole bunch of studies on the benefits of saturated fat.
Yeah, all you could do is educate. That's why it's so important that you do the education arm. Then, my other sponsor, Keto Mojo, you go to their website, tons of education, tons of speeches. They have tons of talks. They have and I know that costs money. That's why I'm glad to have you all as resources to go, hey, go look at their website. They have tons of good information. And when I see Ben's blog coming out, I see what Ben's doing on Instagram, even though I'm not an Instagram guy very often, I have to get more over there. But, there's so much education, and that's all that costs money. It's not like people just volunteer to edit your videos and all these kind of things. And so, yeah, it's amazing though, really figuring out, okay, the other thing that's very interesting in our models is my model is the same. It's like, hey, I can't charge. I don't want to gouge people to come see me, but I've got to minimize my staff. I've got to minimize my overhead. I don't have a huge, gold plated foyer here, but it's actually pretty nice. My office manager almost gave me a stroke when I'm like, why do we need new floors? Why do we need new counters? But it's beautiful. I'm like, every day I come to work, I live here pretty much. So you might as well make it nice. But there's certain things you say, okay, I can not spend money on having billers, for instance. I don't need a biller, right? I don't need certain things. And so you realize all that in medicine, all the middlemen are who's making a ton of money. So if you're reasonable with people and people, yeah, that's worth it for me. I'll do that every month. Okay. You be there when I need you. And then you provide excellent service. So if you have the best quality product and people are health conscious, they go, I'll pay a little bit more and get the good stuff instead of using cheap fillers. That's just the bottom line.
Right. I mean, and it's, and it's just some misunderstanding, of course. I mean, we have people who are comparing their protein shake with 15 grams of plant-based protein with our 27 grams of the most bioavailable proteins, 27 grams of healthy fats from short, medium, and long chain fats, 9 grams of prebiotic fiber, probiotics, digestive enzymes, apple cider vinegar, collagen, vitamins and minerals. It's like, we're a meal. Those guys are some protein with artificial flavors and artificial sweeteners. And so, it is. But we weren't trying to look for anything short term. We knew that this would be a long term, and that's not as pleasant. And that requires you to make some different choices, which we've been proud to do.
Well, I'll tell you, having 2 flavors, right? Hey, by the way, do you know the ratios of which sells more vanilla? Are there more vanilla people or chocolate people in the world? Chocolate, macadamia nut.
Oh yeah, of course we know exactly, because we have to place purchase orders every month. So it's about 60% chocolate, 40% vanilla. I'm more of a vanilla guy. But my go-to is typically 1 scoop of chocolate, 1 scoop of vanilla.
Oh, you're a mixer, huh?
Yeah, I like more of a milk chocolate kind of a
All
flavor.
right, all right.
But yeah, so like my daughter who's back for the summer with school, I make her smoothies and she wants vanilla with some frozen berries.
Well, that's funny.
So
You know what's
it just
funny? I
works
was
well.
going to say that when you were talking about the different flavors, my buddy is a freak about. He loves strawberry ice cream. It was his birthday, so I'm like, oh, how do I make strawberry? I got vanilla. Let me throw some strawberries. Let me throw this and the little coconut maybe flakes, and oh my gosh, it was so good. So
Yeah,
you can make your own flavors. You don't have to. I mean, it takes 3 seconds to throw something else in the blender. If you're blending up the dang thing, anyways, you add whatever flavor you like, and you can make it.
100%.
That's why I see all your shakes, and I'm not a shake guy
Yeah.
necessarily. That's not my thing. But if I can make a protein bar out of it, like I do, I make it. But the problem is, I make it once and I take it to a party or something. My friends like, bring that again, bring it again. I was like, oh, crap. Luckily they're easy. I didn't even have to like the protein bars. You don't even have to bake them. You just put mix it all up, stick it in there, and you're done. And it looks like you spent 20 hours, and it takes like 15 minutes. So don't tell me. I hope my friends aren't listening to this. I know they listen, but all those other things that you do, it just, I mean, the recipes are fantastic. I mean,
Yeah.
so, if you're not a shake person, there's other ways to do it where you don't have to just drink a shake all the time. But if you're in a hurry and you're busy, it's perfect nutrition for you.
Yeah. I mean, and it's especially when I'm more disciplined, it's like, if I feel like something sweet, it'd be like, well, I've got some unflavored Greek yogurt here. I'll just throw a scoop into this and tastes fantastic. Or you throw it, make a chia pudding with a scoop or two of it. So yeah, it is easy in that regard. And so I either make it my first meal of the day. And I do intermittent fasting, of course, because I'm Ben's brother. And so right around 11:30 noon, it'll be a shake, or increasingly it's like, well, I need to make this the last thing of the day so that I avoid snacking, because just the evenings, it's like, oh, well, hey, the family's doing this, or the neighbor dropped this off, or, my daughter, who's not quite as low carb as I am, bought these snacks, and it's like, oh, I can have a few of these. Well, if you make the shake the last thing you eat in the day, preferably earlier in the day, and you're full and satisfied, it tastes good, that helps as well. Boy, this has been one long paid kind of advertorial for.
No, I want people to know who you are. And I was going to ask
Yeah.
you, instead of just selling stuff out. No, really, I want to know, what was the biggest challenge for starting your own business? What was the thing where you go, that was the tough part?
Yeah, well, COVID was the toughest part. I mean, I've been involved in helping to run some companies that had grown fairly quickly, fairly large. And so I wasn't surprised by some of those things. COVID just threw a lot at us. I think this has been a lot harder work than I expected it to be. But it's been a lot more fun, a lot more rewarding. One of our other partners is my oldest brother, and he had been a Fortune 100 senior executive who'd retired. And when he found out what Ben and I were doing, he was like, I want to be a part of this. And so to be able to work with family, there's some complications with that. You don't always understand one another, especially when you have different backgrounds. But it's been far more satisfying. So I think that's probably the biggest thing, and then the last 2 years have been mostly supply chain related, where it's like, we can't get bags. Wait a second, we have all the other ingredients. Yes. But we can't get bags.
It is.
It's like, well, how do we get bags?
It is maddening. My brother's in the manufacturing. He would tell me, he goes, Brian, it's like, you're trying to make a cake. You have every ingredient except you just don't have eggs, but you can't make it. That's all you need. And you're waiting for eggs, and no one has eggs anywhere. That's the problem.
Well, and it was the manufacturing partner we work with. They're terrific. And so they'd come back and say, hey, if we can swap out this ingredient with this ingredient. It's like, no, we can't do that. So it was things like, we will fly that ingredient in, don't ship it. We'll pay to have it flown in. Well, that's going to be really expensive. Yeah, I know, but our mission isn't to shave pennies. Our mission is to make people as healthy as possible. So we can't change this. Now, I'll say, we're looking at making some changes to our formula to improve it. So for instance, we have some B vitamins that aren't as bioavailable as others. And so people with the MTHFR variant, they won't use our product. Well, that's what we looked at and said, boy, that's something that we should have realized. But I'm not a nutritionist. Ben's not a nutritionist. He's a metabolic scientist. So we went with what we had at the time. And so we're going to improve that. We're going to improve our prebiotic fiber. We're going to improve the Reb M from stevia to a fermented sugar cane, still sugar-free. And so these are some changes that we'll be making. But they're not to save money. They're actually going to cost us money. But we're doing it. We do all of these things for the right reasons.
Yeah, you fine tune it. You go, okay, here's what we can do to reach these people. I mean, MTHFR is a huge issue too with not being able to methylate, and so vitamin absorption could be a problem no matter what they're eating. So I think those are I didn't know about that, so that's pretty cool too. Just trying to help people as much as you can and make it as nutritionally sound. And
well,
don't
and
tell
that's
anyone.
Yeah. I mean, we're doing what we can. I mean, that was one of I mentioned earlier, just that there've been no good plant protein sources for commercially that we could use. Well, we found one. It's entirely unique and it's very expensive. But I've got a son who can't have our shake because he doesn't do well with dairy. I mean, he has a severe allergy to dairy. And so it's my own son can't use our product. And so it's like, boy, we really need to figure this out. And so we were able to find a brilliant one. And so we hope that will be available by the end of the year, early next year. But that's where we focus, is on things that will really, really fundamentally help people. We're not trying to. Yeah.
So that would be like a vegan friendly option.
It's going to be 100% vegan. Yeah.
Wow.
And
yeah.
that's not because, Ben will be the first to tell you, plant-based sources of protein and fats are they're the healthiest out there. Okay, but what about those people who can't, including your nephew who can't have this product?
Yeah, and ethically, some people just don't want to have, so people have asked 100%. Me that before too. So that's having that option available. That's how I am in my practice. Hey, you're vegan. Let's work the best we can. It's going to be a challenge, but let's work. I love to help you. You don't have to be by religion. You could be whatever works, and let's just try to fine tune it. And we need tools for that. And that's why, I reach out to you guys, because it's a tool I can use in practice. It's not something where I'm compromising and, saying, okay, I can get a sponsor. I got 1,000 sponsors waiting. Right. Yeah. But I'm not selecting that. I don't need the money. I need people to help bring the stories out. And I need a good product that I can recommend to my patients. And for me, the joy is seeing people's sugars normalize, like people out of control sugars. And they're like, oh my gosh, I'm eating shakes and my sugars are normalizing. I'm healthier. I feel better. That's the reward we get. I mean, I'm still on a pay cut, as you probably are, over the last couple of years from where I was 2 or 3 or 4 years ago. And then you realize, you know what? It's totally worth it, to bring a product where you could be proud and not say we cheapened it. We didn't stick to our integrity, basically.
Yeah, totally. I mean, my pay is a fraction of what it was, but the money will follow. I mean, it just requires us to get it in a lot of people's hands and in their stomachs, and that's a good thing because they'll be healthier for it. And so. Yeah, when that's tied, when you do the right things for the right reasons, the right results will happen.
Yeah, it all works out. Then you get people that are evangelizing. You have, I have a 76-year-old lady who turned her life around. Now she's evangelized her entire neighborhood, right? And they're all doing the same thing, and they're coming off their meds. And so it's cool to see the impact that we can have, and man, there's just so much potential out there where we can help people and get them on the right track. So I got to ask you, Joel, what's life's best medicine for you after all this? What have you learned? What are the life lessons you pass down to your kids? Where do you go when everything's rough and you're arguing with Ben about ingredients and all that stuff? Where do you find your peace?
Well, the most important one is I'm very religious, and you'd hear this from Ben as well. And so it's Jesus Christ. I'll leave it there. I don't want to make this a religious thing, but my religion is incredibly important to me. And so that's where I find peace and solace, and especially perspective. And of course, tied to that is my family. And so we laugh together a lot. We have meaningful moments. We try and create memories. And that's what really, really matters. And so in order to live the life that we want, as long as we want, as long as we can, we sacrifice certain things. We don't eat all the things that we want, the body would want. We don't drink all the things. We don't sleep as much as perhaps we want. We make those sacrifices. We invest in ourselves to be as healthy as we can, because we've all seen within our families that there's greater satisfaction and joy with what really matters when you prioritize your health. And so it's God, it's family, and it's your health.
Yeah, and I think we're so similar in those views, and you go, that's what really matters. Ultimately, that's why I did this podcast, because so many people are out there chasing the new car. Like, as soon as I get that, I'll be happy, the bigger house. And so episode after episode, you hear people saying, I realize that's not going to make you happy, having faith, enjoying life. And from a medical perspective, I have to go back to your brother for a second here. I go,
Sure.
Man, look, if I want to live a long life, what do I got to do? He goes, 5 things. 5 things, that's it. I'm like, that's it? Yeah, that 5 things. Okay, number 1, don't be stressed out and running around like an idiot all the time. Get enough sleep. I was like, I don't like your rules. I don't think I like Ben Bikman's rules, because I'm 0 for 2. Those I was working 18-hour days and, sleeping 4 hours a night, right? Eat real food, right? Cut out processed food and all that. Exercise regularly. Don't smoke or drink to excess. Okay. It's not that complicated. You go, okay, what are those things? And all of us will say, oh, these 2 are tough, but this one I'm doing great. And so we can really look at metabolic health and say, okay, which of these things can we tweak? And so if I can end health code into health, or I can, help someone with their faith, or help someone to relax a little bit, not worry about all the, having the biggest house in the neighborhood, all those kind of things, you realize the implication. Just sitting on the beach or just sitting there with your kids and laughing, that raises oxytocin, lower stress hormone. It does so much for you. If I had a pill for that, I'd be a multimillionaire.
Of course.
Right. So people go, what pill? And the sad part, I'll tell you, Joel, this is what makes me, I've read study after study after study on the gut microbiome, which you guys are addressing, and also on cortisol stress, so the effect of stress on physiology. And every study I read at the end says, we need to find a pharmaceutical that will treat that. It's like, well, spend time with your family and laugh, and go sit on the beach and contemplate, to think about nothing for a few minutes, shut your brain down, because when you're hyperventilating and in stress mode 24/7, it's not the Mediterranean diet, it's the Mediterranean lifestyle. It's a whole constellation of things, as Ben's book tells us.
Yeah, absolutely. Lift some heavy things, go for a walk, get enough sleep. I mean, those are all, anyway, it isn't hard. It's very simple. It's hard to live. But it's incremental. It's making those modest improvements over time, just like you've said.
So if people want to talk to you, can they track you down somewhere? They just find you through Health Code website? How do they?
Yeah, I'm not active on social media at all, except for within the business. And so the way to talk with us is at Get Health. That's GETHLTH. That's on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Pinterest. I don't know. I'm sure I'm missing several. YouTube as well. It's all at Get Health, HLTH. And yeah, that's how. And I'd encourage those people, even if you're not remotely interested in the product, but you want information and recipes that will help you get healthier. Yeah. Just go to gethealth.com and you can sign up for our newsletter right at the very bottom of it. If you don't want to sign up for the newsletter, just click on Learn and you can read all of those articles. We're delighted to have people who just learn more and make healthier choices. That's what our mission is, to help people get healthy.
And the recipes are there. And so I can cost these guys some money. I have a discount code called MedHealth, ME for metabolic health, METHEALTH. You save some, you get a discount on that. And then they know that, their money is being used wisely by sponsoring this podcast. So everyone, I wanted to have them on because I haven't done a great job of explaining what their product is. But I know them, I know their integrity, and that's why they're sponsoring the podcast. People ask me why, Low Carb MD, we have no sponsors because we didn't want to look like we had a conflict of interest anywhere. But if I believe in a product and I'm already using it and my patients are using it and I like it, and I think it's a great fit. So, and again, I appreciate it. Right when I reach out, you guys go, what do we got to do? Let's make this happen. So I appreciate that. And, all these stories that people are hearing, these guys are a big part of that, because I wouldn't be doing it on my own. I can't afford to do it on my own. So thank you. I appreciate your support. And everyone, thanks for listening. Go out and support these guys and support companies that stand up for your values, that what you value in life. It may cost you a little bit more, but you know what? Dang it. Like some companies, I just see the poor integrity, and I just can't, even if I like their product sometimes, I say, my money's not going there. So these are good guys, and they're keeping these stories coming. So I appreciate it. So, hey, be kind to yourself, be kind to others, take care of yourself. They say that healthy people have a million dreams and sick people have just one. And that's the truth. If we can stay healthy, it's not as sexy, but go out for those walks, laugh, spend time with family. There's some great messages here, and put good stuff in our brains and in our stomachs, and we'll do better. Joel, thanks so much, man.
Thank you. What a pleasure.
Thank you for listening to this episode. We greatly appreciate your support. We would greatly appreciate a positive thumbs up on all of the platforms like iTunes and Spotify or wherever you're listening. And we just thank you for our Patreon supporters. We greatly appreciate your help in getting this message out. We think there's a lot of important information, and hopefully this helps you. Have a great day, and thank you for listening, and thank you for your support.